All right, hello, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our channel. Here we are with our fourth episode. Time's going by quickly here, already on episode number 4, but just a brief intro. So again, my name is Paul,
I'm Gabe.
and we are Dynasty Done Differently. So we got some unique ideas for this video today. I know we're recording this kind of late, so we'll probably post it kind of late, but hopefully it's not past anyone's bedtime. So basically, what we're going to be doing today, as you can see on the screen here, we've pulled up Keep Trade Cut. For those of you who don't know, Keep Trade Cut is a popular crowdsourcing website for all things fantasy football, specifically Dynasty. So it's got a trade calculator, it's got rankings, it's got like you can look at different like league power rankings, all sorts of different things. So what we're going to start off by doing is just each time you log into Keep Trade Cut, they give you like a random Keep Trade Cut scenario. So as you can see on the screen there's Mike Evans, an early 2023 second round pick, and Desmond Ritter. And basically, as part of the crowdsourcing information that Keep Trade Cut collects, each user will then put in their own preferences. So, like for an example, who do you want to keep and trade and cut amongst these three options on the screen? So Gabe and I are just going to do a couple of those really quick, just to kind of see our opinions, maybe see where we differ, where we agree, get a pulse on the market a little bit. And then we're really excited. After that, we're going to be doing a roster breakdown of one of Gabe's Dynasty rosters. Now, it's actually in a league that we play in together. But so we're going to be doing. I've did a deep dive into his team. I'm sure he has too. Obviously, it's his team, so I'm sure he's spent plenty of time looking at it. But just going to do a kind of a deep dive into the settings of the league, his roster construction. In our last few videos, we've talked a lot about roster construction and optimizing your roster and your lineup to fit the settings of the league that you're in. So we want to give you all a real example of how we can try to do that. And specifically, I asked Gabe to pick a league or a roster where he feels like maybe like a little bit more stuck or his roster needs a little bit more work. So it's not his best roster, but it'll be a good one to get into, right? Don't you think so, buddy?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, you
I think it'll be
excited
a
for
fun
it?
one to go through. Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, I'll now obviously I have to be careful. I can't help you too much because I'm in the league with you, so I still
Yeah,
want to beat
exactly.
you. I'll try to help out where I can. But so we're excited for that. Without further ado, for those of you who are liking the content, if you watch the previous videos, you like the content, please leave a comment, subscribe. And as I said, we are going to be doing a roster breakdown of Gabe's, but if anyone else is interested in a roster breakdown, we love doing this, so we'd be interested in doing roster breakdowns for you guys, or ladies. Just let us know in the comments, and we can do a roster breakdown personalized to your squad too, if anyone's interested in that. But again, please go ahead, subscribe, help us get some notoriety with the YouTube algorithm, and we'll keep pumping out content for you guys. Without further ado, though, you want to get started on the Keep Trade Cuts?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. So we already see the one that's on the screen here. I'll let you go first, but between Mike Evans
Okay.
and early 23 second and Desmond Ritter, what are you thinking?
Um.
And this is obviously assuming you haven't already had your rookie
Oh,
draft. Oh, no, an
why
ad.
is this ad massive? Yeah.
In kitchen.
I want the ad. Okay.
Yeah, this is
Let's see.
assuming you
So
have not had your rookie draft already.
early second, Mike Evans or Ritter. Um. I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm between Ritter this early second first.
You mean you didn't decide while I was doing that whole long intro? I'm just messing with you, man.
Split
It's a
decision.
tough
Yeah, I
one.
guess I'll go. Keep trade cut.
All right, so you would keep Ritter, trade the early second, and cut Mike Evans.
Yeah. I think the early second and Ritter are pretty close for me.
Okay. Yeah, I guess do you want to give maybe a bit of an explanation of because I differ from you, but before I give
Okay.
my view, I'd be curious to hear like why you think why
Yeah,
you chose those options.
yeah, I would take Ritter. I think in a Superflex league, I think just because I think he'll start off the year as the starter for the Falcons, and he has a lot of great weapons. And then I think that's pretty similar to an early second because you can either draft somebody pretty well there, or people value early seconds pretty highly, and you can throw that into a deal to get something else. And I would, and then ultimately I would put Mike Evans last just because of his age and their quarterback situation is kind of shaky this year. Because I know there are talks that he could get traded, which would probably help him out a lot if he gets traded to a contending team. But I think if he stays on the Buccaneers, I think they're probably going to be kind of trash this year.
Fair enough. You don't believe in Baker and Kyle Trask?
I didn't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, I could see that. Now, I mean, the thing with keep trade cut obviously doesn't take into consideration the context of your league or the context of your team. So I
Mhm.
think my answer would definitely vary if I'm a contender versus like a rebuilding roster.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. Like, let's say I'm a contender. If I'm a contender, I'm going to keep Mike Evans, trade the early second, and then cut Desmond Ritter. If I'm a contender, I'm assuming Desmond Ritter is hopefully not in my starting lineup anyway, so I don't mind cutting him. Now, if I'm a rebuilding team, it gets a little bit
Mhm.
more interesting. If I'm a rebuilder, I want to keep the 23 second because if I'm rebuilding, I want pick as many picks and liquidity as I can get. And then I would probably trade Mike Evans because I think he has more market value. And then I
Okay.
would still cut Desmond Ritter. So again, that's just my take. I mean, some people may
Okay.
value Ritter higher than Mike Evans at this point, especially like you said for a Superflex league. But that's kind of my take on it. All right, you want to go to the next one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess we can see what the community says too. So they have the
Yeah.
early second is the highest, then Mike Evans, then
Okay. So it seems like the community
cut
more so
Desmond Ritter.
agrees with
Yeah.
the community more so agrees with what I said than I guess
It was exactly what you said for the last one, I guess. Yeah.
as a rebuilder. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So most people on Keep Trade Cut are taking that into the perspective of being a rebuilding roster. I could assume.
Yeah.
Maybe not. All right. So now for this one, we've got big meaty Mike Williams, as
Hey.
Gabe and I call him, a 23 early second again, and a 24 early second. Ooh. Okay. What are you thinking on this one? This one's tough.
Um,
I just stole your catchphrase. This is tough.
Big meaty Mike. Um, because obviously you take the 23 second with
I guess let's
24.
to make it easier, right? So we see the format there. Say it's obviously Superflex, half PPR, 12 team. Let's say maybe you're a contending roster. So
Same
like, what would you
roster.
do if you were a contender in this situation? Maybe you do if you were a contender. I'll do if I was a rebuilder to make it easier.
I think I'd still take the 23 early second, and then I think I'd take the picks
Yeah, you cut big
over
meaty
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
big meaty Mike.
I think I agree with you there. The one thing I will say is you might be able to get more value for the 23 second, so maybe I'd trade that one and keep the 24 second, but again, it kind of depends. Okay, so then if I was a rebuilder, um, I would, again, it is tough. I would, as a rebuilder, I think I would try to trade Big Meaty Mike. I think he could still have value to a competing roster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess I'd probably try to trade the early second, the 23 one. Try to trade the early 23 second. Maybe try to move back in the second round. So I'd trade the 23 second. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Oh, I said I'd trade Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Whoops. Oh, damn.
I trade them all.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, could I just trade them all? Um. Dang. Okay. Never mind. Sorry. I changed my answer. I would cut Mike Williams.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd cut Mike Williams. I would trade the 23 early second, and I'd keep the 24 second.
Okay.
Just with the hope that maybe with the 23 early second, if I'm a rebuilder anyway, maybe I can tier down. So like trade, let's say the 203 or the 204 for like the 208 to 209 and a third, or another 24 second or something like that. Whereas I'd rather keep the second that's in the future. Okay, yeah, my bad. I kind of botched that one a little bit, but
No, it's okay. No,
do you want to do one more?
yeah, sure. And then also I think it's supposed to just be a 1, 2, 3, not necessarily keep trade cut. So keep the highest valued asset and then trade the second and then cut the third, rather than
Yeah.
actually keep trade cutting.
I guess. I think you have to take into consideration though, like what other people might be interested in buying. But so the community would keep the 23 early second, trade Mike Williams, cut the 24 early second. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, they value the second highest, and they still value Mike above the early 24 second.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, then this
Want
last
to
one.
skip this one?
Yeah, let's skip it. This is a crapshoot.
Let's find a good one. Ooh, I actually like this one. Let's
Oh
do this.
God, that one's hard. Okay, so T. Higgins, Tua, and
Ooh.
C.J. Stroud.
This is a good one.
Ooh. Okay,
Well,
I'll
I'll
go
go
first
first.
because I know my answer. I am
Okay.
trading Higgins. I think he has a lot of market value, and he's in a range of wide receivers where they're all pretty similar to me. So I would
Mhm.
trade him because I think he has the most market value. And honestly, just because I love Tua, but he scares me. I just think the injury risk is too much for me to keep him. So I'd cut Tua and I'd keep C.J. Stroud. Yeah, I guess that's my take on it.
Okay.
Do you see it differently?
I think that's what I would do as well. Yeah, I would say Stroud is probably the most valued.
Surprised. I
I'd
thought you
trade
would say
T.
to. I'm so sorry to cut you off. I was gonna say I'm surprised. I thought you were gonna say you'd keep T Higgins. I know you're a big T Higgins fan.
It's close. Yeah, I think like you said with the quarterback, I think I'd take the chance on Stroud here.
That's fair. Okay. All right. Well, fun little activity. And again, all of you watching, feel free to share in the comments if you guys would do things differently. So let's see. The community
Yeah.
would keep T Higgins, trade CJ Stroud, and cut Tua. Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So they would keep T instead of Stroud. Okay. Well, I mean, what does the community know anyway?
Yeah. Screw 'em.
All right. Shall we get to the main event tonight?
Sure, let's do it. So I'll switch the
Okay.
scene here. Here's my
Yeah.
roster.
So there is Gabe's roster. She's a beauty. Take a look at her. All those players, all those picks. Pretty interesting roster. So let's, I guess, give a little bit of context into the league here. So
Mhm.
this is a 12-team Superflex, full PPR, 0.5 tight end premium. So the tight end premium is not that big. And it is a 0.25 point per carry league. So that's similar to the startup mock draft that we did in our last video with the 0.25 point per carry. So running backs are heavily weighted here, as are mobile quarterbacks. And I believe it is 6-point passing touchdowns though. So
Yeah.
other stat to know. Obviously it's start 11 as you guys can see there. So 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 3 flex spots, and a super flex. And I did not count the total number of roster spots. So I'm not sure exactly how many roster spots there are, but well, let me just count really quick. 1, 2.
It was like, what, 27 or something like that?
So there's 13 bench spots. So 11 plus 13 is 24. Plus 4 taxi takes you up to 28. So
28,
total
okay.
fan rosters. Yeah, there you go. So pretty solid settings there. I like those settings with the start 11 and 28-man
Mhm.
rosters. I guess, is there any more context you want to give into like the league or the scoring settings, or just like how this team came to be before we kind of dive into like next moves, or did you want to just get started with like what to do from here?
Yeah, sure. I can give some background on it. 'Cause I think ultimately with the point per carry, I think I kind of screwed up the startup draft a little bit. I kind of punted at running back, so I think that's why you can tell I don't really have a ton of RBs on the roster. I mainly just have Gibbs and Charbonnet as rookies, so I think that was kind of a mistake I did in the startup. But then, as you can see, my quarterback room is pretty nuts with Jalen Hurts, Burrow, and Lamar. So I have 3 top, maybe 6 or 7 quarterbacks, and then my tight ends are pretty weak. And then I guess just to give some context in this league, it seems like a lot of people value the RBs pretty highly, and then I think they also value the wide receivers pretty heavily as well.
Yep. Did you want to talk about any of the like the recent trades you made to get to this point? I thought some of those were probably worth bringing up.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Because I mean, we will say this is a very active league. There's a lot of
Yeah.
trading that goes on. So I mean, things have kind of died down since our rookie draft a couple months, or I guess about a month ago now. So things have died down since then, but it's still a pretty active league, and a lot of trades were going on, especially like a couple months ago. But yeah, do you want to talk about some of the trades you made, like the most recent ones?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I can show you guys here. So I did a startup draft trade. It was pretty minor. I just traded back in the 7th to get an 8th and an 11th. And then one of the biggest trades I made after the startup was to trade away Garrett Wilson, and I got Hollywood, a 24 first, and then I think it was the 210. So I think looking back on this was kind of I think a little bit of an undersell for Garrett Wilson, except this trade occurred back in January, so this was before Rodgers was traded to the Jets. So I think this was probably a slight undersell, but also I don't think it was a terrible down tier trade.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did Lance for the 107, so I gave away Lance and got the 107.
I'd say that's worked out nicely for you so far.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think you can get that these days.
Yeah, I don't think you get the 107 for Trey Lance right now. So
No. I was kind of iffy on that at the time, but yes, yeah, that was in early February. And then this trade was a little bigger. It was I got Pat Freiermuth, Christian Watson, and a 4th for Fant, a 2nd, and then the trade that I got I mean the 107 from the previous trade.
Pretty nice, pretty nice. All right, what about you? Got to show them that big boy trade. Where's
Yeah.
that Hurts trade? Or
Look
we're
at
not
that.
there yet. We're not there yet. Sorry.
Yeah, and then this one, I like this one. I traded away Tua and Devonta Smith, and I got Lamar and Pittman.
So a little tier up at quarterback while you tier down a little bit at wide receiver. Okay.
Yeah, and then I got off of Tua because I'm kind of worried about him. Even though I liked him, 'cause I think I drafted him in the third round of the startup. I drafted him pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a 24 first and gave away Pittman.
So you basically traded Tua and Devontae Smith for Lamar and a 24 first. So ultimately that turned out very nicely for you, I would say.
Yeah.
You got the better quarterback and you got a 24 first for Devontae Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
I mean, between those two trades, yeah.
Here's the big boy.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Tell them about that.
So yeah, I was gunning for Hurts, and this guy was attempting to tank basically for the 23 season. So I got Hurts, DK, and then a 23 second and a 25 second, and then I traded away Fryermuth. I think it was the 106, a 24 first, a 24 first, and another 24 first. So 3 24 firsts in total.
So 4 firsts in total. So the 324 first, the 106 and 23, and Pat Fryermuth. And you got Jalen Hurts, DK Metcalf in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Pretty. It's a big boy trade. It's a big boy trade.
Yeah.
Personally, I still prefer your side of it, but it's definitely there's a lot of moving pieces there.
Yeah, because I was basically trying to do a QB horde. I guess it's probably important to tell people for the context of my team, as you can see with the 3 elite quarterbacks. But I guess I have tried to sell one of them and basically down tier, but I haven't really been successful at all with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other trades you wanted to touch on?
I got Mechie. No, I traded away Mechie and got a 25 second. I got Jelani Woods for $20 in Fab.
No, that's that one's not that much of a needle mover.
And then this one was actually kind of big. I traded away Jameson Williams, and then Christian Watson, and I got the 103 and a 23 second.
Was this was before the JMO suspension, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
It was, yeah, I think so.
Okay, I was gonna say it's ludicrous if it's after, but
Yeah.
that's a nice trade for you.
And then I think this was just a small one. I think this was during the rookie draft. I think I traded back in the third or something like that.
Okay.
And then here I got a 24 first basically for Calvin Ridley and Shaheed, and then I got Mechie back actually, which is
So
funny.
let's see. You gave up Calvin Ridley and Keontae Ingram. You got the 24 first and a couple of roster clogger wide receivers. No, I'm kidding. potentially, but we'll see how they pan out. But John Mechie, Kyle Phillips, and Rashid Shaheed. Okay, all right, cool.
And then right after the trade, I immediately dropped Kyle Phillips.
Okay,
right
good,
after
good.
the trade.
I was gonna say, if he's on your roster, he's gonna be one of the first people I tell you to cut. But
Yeah.
okay, so those are the recent trades. So now we know kind of how your team got to where it is right now, for the most part. So all right, I guess getting into the breakdown a little bit. Let's just take it position by position. The way that usually both of us play Dynasty, right? Starts and ends with the quarterbacks. And so, as you said, you've got monster QB room. You've got Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and then just for a little extra good luck, you got Jacoby Brissett on the bench as well. So I would say, yeah, your quarterback room is pretty solid. Some ideas there, things that you might want to do. I know you said you've been trying to tear down from one of the QBs and one of the 3 elite QBs.
Mhm.
And you haven't been able to so far. My opinion would be, and again, I know I'm in this league with you, like obviously I'm competing against you, but my advice would be like don't settle. Don't get desperate and end up moving one of them just because you don't want to have 3 elite QBs. Like actually hoard them. Keep them on your roster. And I think especially with how active this league is, and once we get to the regular season, I think there are going to be people that get desperate for a quarterback and will be willing to pay up for the proper value during the season, even if they weren't willing to do so over the summer now or over the off season. So that would be my take on it. But right, the other side of that is the way that this roster construction does not pan out for you is if the rest of the league continues to ice you out and no one gives you proper value for any of those quarterbacks, and you basically just got one of them burning a hole on your bench every week. Which
Exactly.
again, there are worse problems to have. So I wouldn't just get rid of one of them just to, tear down or anything. But that could be a potential, setback with that potential strategy is if the rest of the league continues to ice you out as they've done so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I think during the season someone will get desperate enough to pay up for one of those three. Um, and then I guess one thing that maybe you could consider doing, I don't know if you'd really be able to do much for it. I know, so it looks like you've got Jacoby Brissett on the auto accept trade block for what is that? Any third round pick?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you'd be able to, but my advice would be wait and see if Jacoby Brissett is named the day one starter, which I don't think he will be. I think it's going to be Sam Howell. But
Mhm.
if he's named the day one starter, or if at any point during the season he takes over, he might be an option that you could potentially try to tear down from. Or maybe if you
Okay.
could even send out offers in the league now, like if anyone thinks that Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter, maybe, an offer. I would say maybe send out like Jacoby Brissett for another guy who is a backup who maybe has even less of a chance to start and a 24 second or something like that if you can get it done, or even a 24 third, or
Mhm.
two 24 thirds, or a 24 third and a 25 third, something like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially though if you get some hype, I would say try to capitalize on that if you get some hype over the offseason or into the season. But yeah, that's
Or to
pretty
the
much.
Howell manager too. I could do.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
could give
true.
it to the Howell manager. Maybe see if
That's
he'll bite.
true. Yeah. Yeah, if he's feeling nervous or something, or just wants the insurance, if he's someone that plays scared, right, and he wants the backup QB for his potential risky starter QB, you might be
Yeah.
able to capitalize on that. Yeah, good point. I think that pretty much covers it though with the quarterbacks, right? There's not too much else to say there. You're pretty solid. It's a good problem to have the clear lead two
Yeah.
guys right now. Okay. And another thing I will say is with the point per carry, that boosts Hurts and Lamar even more with it being a point per carry. Obviously, Burrow is elite too, but I think that's an added bonus for the two mobile guys. Okay, so moving to your running backs. So as you said, it's a little bit of a thin running back room. So your two starters are Jahmyr Gibbs and Zach Charbonnet. You got two rookies coming in. And then on your bench, you have a lot of guys. I mean, Chris Rodriguez, Eric Gray, Latavius Murray, Naeem Hines, CEH, Deion Jackson, Michael Carter, Izzy Abanikanda, and then in your taxi squad, you've got Evan Hall and Kyron Williams. So you definitely have a lot of depth at running back. Honestly, this running back room is kind of how I tend to approach most of my leagues with the running back room. I like to have one or two high end guys, and then basically just a bunch of bodies after that, guys who could fill in, who aren't going to be in most starting lineups most weeks. But if there is an injury ahead of them or something happens where they're thrust into a starting role, I would feel comfortable putting them in my lineup. So I'd say the only guys maybe that are on the bubble of whether or not they should be on your roster would be maybe like Naeem Hines and Latavius Murray, just because they're kind of older guys and they are kind of both buried. They're both on the same team, aren't they? Yeah, they're both on Buffalo. I forgot. Latavius Murray signed with Buffalo.
Oh, that's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
so maybe those guys you can consider. It looks like at least CEH you have the auto accept trade block.
hmm
Um,
Any second, I
he-
think. Yeah.
he's the only running back you've got on the right. So you've got him for any second pick, any second round pick, or two thirds.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think there's a reason no one's come calling for CEH because they're not going to pay a second for him. You might be able to get two thirds
No.
though.
Maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
but I would be fine liquidating for that price if you're able to get a deal like that done. Um, Otherwise, yeah, you got the two, well, the one elite guy I think in Jahmyr Gibbs. Zach Charbonnet I think will be serviceable. Um, but again, what I like to do at running back, and actually I did this myself in this league a little bit, is maybe, if actually, I guess one question I should ask you before we even get to all of this, I wanted to ask you this earlier, but I forgot. Are you trying to contend this year, or are you looking at this as more of a rebuilding roster?
I guess ultimately I'm trying to contend, but then I'm okay if I don't do super well. But what does stink is I don't have my 24 first. So if it
Right.
doesn't pan out, because then also I don't know if we want to get into it now, but we can look at Dynasty Daddy and some of the tools that they have. Because then I've actually run they have a playoffs, like a season simulation kind of thing, and then it says that I'm like the second worst team, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into that in a little bit. But like for you right now, what you want for this team, it sounds like, is to compete.
Yep. Yeah. I'm trying to
Okay.
compete. Yeah.
Right, and like you said, especially if you don't have your own 24 first, you don't
Mhm.
want to all of a sudden start tanking because, you know, you don't even have
Yeah.
that. Okay, so I think the running backs that you have, I think you can get by with those. Again, this is a start 11, so it's a little bit of a deeper league. You don't necessarily have to have like the, absolute studs in your starting lineup. And for that matter, I still think Jahmyr Gibbs could be a stud. So you've got at least one. And then I think Zach Charbonnet is a serviceable RB2. I think he's, going to be splitting work with Kenneth Walker pretty evenly and should at least be good enough to crack your starting lineup most weeks. And then you've got good depth on the bench. I mean, all those names we listed earlier, like they could find opportunities to fill into your starting lineup, whether it's Clyde, whether it's Michael Carter, or Izzy Abanikanda if Breece Hall's coming back slow or something like that. Even Kyron Williams if something happens to Cam Akers, like Chris Rodriguez in Washington. Like some of these guys, they can definitely fill in. So you've got depth in terms of quantity at the running back position, maybe not so much in terms of quality, but maybe that's an area to try to improve on. Now, usually the approach I take with running backs is I try to tier down. But especially if you're trying to compete this year, I'd say, I mean, I wonder, can you maybe try to liquidate some more of those running backs on your bench? Like, can you put more of them on the auto accept trade block and just, depending on their hype or where they are in community rankings, like put them for a second, put them for a third. Don't be greedy. Like, just try to liquidate so then you have those picks. The roster spot that you clear up, you can then pick up more guys off the waiver wire, and then maybe you have more seconds and thirds and even fourths to use during the season to trade for like spot start running backs and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay. Have you tried doing that at all yet, or not really?
No, I haven't. Yes, I guess I think one of my other thoughts was to potentially to kind of get some value for Gibbs and basically down tier off him for I don't know more like a vet running back like a I guess Dalvin Cook is coming to mind, and then like 24 first or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Well, unfortunately, I don't think you'd ever be able to get that deal done because Dalvin Cook is on my roster and I'm not
That's
I'm
right.
not good enough for running back. But I get the idea. I get the
Yeah.
idea. I get the idea. Well, yeah, and it actually, so maybe let's go through all the positions, and then I had a couple trade ideas too, and I know we already plugged Keep Trade Cut. We'll plug Dynasty Daddy too in a minute here, but there's a lot of cool stuff on that website that we wanted to show you guys. But so yeah, with the running backs, I think those are kind of your two pieces of actionable advice right now. Is if you can liquidate some of those guys on your bench right now for extra picks,
Okay.
and try to have those picks to use as fuel during the season, I think that would be good. Because right now, some of those rookies that are coming in, Chris Rodriguez, Eric Gray, Evan Hull, Izzy Abanikanda, right? Like they could be high upside rookies. I'm sure they're on your team for a reason. You either drafted them or traded for them for a reason. Maybe you can build on that hype and try to liquidate some of those guys now, because once the season actually comes around, you don't know if those guys are actually going to be, having opportunities to start. Whereas if you have those extra seconds and those extra thirds when the season rolls around, you can use them to buy the guys that are actually getting opportunities and spot starts at that time. You know what I mean? Especially with it
Yeah.
being an active league. I don't know if you guys are familiar, like you, Gabe, or you guys, the audience, but like there's this thing known as like day trading, right? Like fantasy day trading. And that's the type of thing that happens in active leagues like this, where it's almost like on a week-to-week basis during the season, especially at the running back position. You can try to trade guys away for picks if you don't need them, or you can try to trade picks for these guys if you do need like a spot to start at the running back position. So I'll stop there for now at the running backs. Was there anything else you wanted to say though about the RB position?
I don't think so. Yes, I think most of these guys are kind of not really hyped up. Like Zach Charbonnet, I think he has some values. I think there's some truthers out there, but I think a lot of people are kind of down on him. So I don't think he's really a sell. And then I think Izzy is probably more of a hold as well. I feel like a lot of these guys aren't really sellable right now. So it probably
Yeah,
just makes sense to hold most of them, except
well,
for Gibbs.
it depends on the price you're looking for. I mean,
Hmm.
you could again, this is a 0.25 point per carry league, so you want guys that are going to get
Yeah.
a lot of touches. Could you
Mhm.
potentially trade Zach Charbonnet for Brian Robinson in a second or something like that?
That's true. Yeah, something
They're
like that
both,
isn't bad.
yeah. I mean, they're both in a committee, which, by the way, like 90% of running backs are nowadays anyway. So, like, could you do
Yeah.
something like that? And then, like, and you're not disrupting your roster construction. You can
Mhm.
still slide Brian Robinson into that starting position. He's probably going to score similarly to Zach Charbonnet this season, unless
He
God
is.
forbid,
Yeah.
like, injury or something like that. And then you tack on an extra second. You know,
I actually like that idea. Yeah.
well,
Okay.
there
Yeah.
you go. Go
It's
set
not
out the
bad.
offer right now. But something like that, or also like I was saying, the guys on the bench, like liquidate them. I mean, again, maybe they don't have much hype now, but if you put them on the auto accept trade block, especially with how active this league is, you might get some people who are biting.
They
And
might, yeah.
you got to put the name. You got to be willing to trade the names that people will want to buy.
Exactly.
In an ideal world, yeah, you can sell CEH for a second, you can sell Michael Carter for 2/3, you can sell Deion Jackson for 2/3,
Yeah.
but probably most guys aren't going to bite at those offers. So I think what you want to do is try to accrue those extra picks to give you flexibility during the season, but also at the same time not disrupting your roster construction. Make sense?
Yeah. And then also I guess I would add. Do you think I should buy another running back with? I don't know. I have 3 seconds, or I could give away a 24 second, or even the 24 first that I have.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
My philosophy on running backs is unless it's well below like market cost, I'm not buying running backs during the off season. My plan is to wait during the season and see who's actually getting touches and producing, and then buy a running back if I'm a competing roster. But I don't think there's any reason you need to take that kind of risk right now in June.
Right.
When like the picks give you liquidity and flexibility in the future, whereas like if you buy into a running back right now, like what happens if he tears his ACL in training camp or OTAs or something like that, or in the preseason, or just ends up being not getting as many touches as we're predicting right now or something like that. So I wouldn't try to be buying into running backs right now unless you're tearing down. I'd more so be trying to trying to liquidate some of these guys on your bench that are like other than Gibbs and Charbonnet. I think anybody else is a liquidation candidate. Any other running back on your roster, I would say, if
That
you can
makes
get decent. I think some of them you could try to sell for a second. Most of these guys, you might only have to shoot for a third or 2/3 with a couple of them.
Yeah.
So it's up to you if you feel comfortable making those moves. But in my opinion, the way I play Dynasty is I'd rather have the picks because that gives me flexibility during the season because I can use those whenever I want. And everyone's interested in picks. Okay, maybe for a certain price, but everyone's interested in picks. Not everyone's going to be interested in specific running backs or just players in general. So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox there because whenever we get to running backs, I I tend to get passionate because I am a little bit of an RB hater. But that's nothing new in today's dynasty landscape. But so before we get to the wide receivers, actually, I'm going to do the tight ends because I think that's going to be maybe a shorter discussion.
Yeah.
For the tight ends on your roster right now, again, this is a 0.5 tight end premium, so there is a tight end premium, in my opinion, and just from like the data I've seen from other content creators and podcasts and like data-driven websites. In a 0.5 tight end premium, it's not as high as people think it is. It's not making that much of a difference as people think it is. And I will say what I've noticed from some of the trading and the activity in this league, as in most leagues that are a 0.5 tight end premium, I think people overvalue how much of a difference that premium makes. So you might be able to capitalize on that. But your tight ends right now, so you got Mike Gesicki. On the bench, you got Jelani Woods, and then in the taxi, you got Sam Laporta and Greg Dulcich, my boy. I love Greg D. I do think he's maybe a little overhyped in the community, but I like his look. He's got the stash and the hair flowing.
Yeah.
He wears jorts too. He seems like a fun guy. But okay, so those four guys. Right now, I'll tell you, Jelani Woods, I'd put him on the auto accept trade block for any fourth. Literally, any fourth. I don't care. Give me the pick. I prefer the pick. I don't think Jelani Woods is ever going to crack your lineup, and I don't think he really has any value. I mean, I think you said you bought him for like what, 20 fab or something like that.
Yeah, 20 fab. Yeah.
Which honestly, no offense, my friend, but that may have been an overpay.
Maybe.
For Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not. Obviously, I'm not. I don't pretend to be an expert, but if this were my team, that's what I would be doing. I don't think he really has much value on your roster. And I think you'd be okay going into the season with 3 tight ends. And definitely I think Jelani Woods is your least coveted tight end out of the 4. So I'd be okay liquidating him for any fourth. You can try for a third maybe, but I'd say even for a fourth I would take that. And then if you can't get a fourth from him, I would just drop him and pick up another running back just to have more running back depth. So that's what I would do. And then in terms of the other guys, I see it's tough because I think most people would say Greg D is probably your best tight end.
Yeah.
And so maybe you'd want to try to trade away like Gesicki or maybe even Sam Laporta. The problem is people aren't buying Mike Gesicki right now. People might be buying Sam Laporta. They're definitely buying Greg D, I think, in a lot of leagues. They're not buying Mike Gesicki. So the question I have for you then is, knowing what you know about warp, wins over replacement for those who aren't familiar, and all the other like deep dive research you've done over the last couple of years of playing Dynasty, especially the last few months that we've really, gotten into like creating videos and stuff. Do you think, would you feel comfortable moving off of Greg Dulcich, like tearing down from Greg Dulcich, and maybe adding on another pick? Like, let's say, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example, but I mean, could you trade Greg Dulcich for Tyler Higbee in a second, something like that? Would you feel comfortable doing that?
I would, yeah.
Okay, I bet that's a league. That's a league. I bet that's a move you might be able to get done.
I think so, yeah.
Because right, in a perfect world, you want to trade away Mike Gesicki, or you want to trade away even Sam Laporta. I don't know if people are buying those guys.
Yeah.
Now, Sam Laporta, if you can trade him
Maybe.
off the rookie hype, I would do that because personally, I'm just not a fan of rookie tight ends. They tend to take a while to develop in the league, but I also understand if you want to hold on to him and kind of, see if he does anything his rookie season and then his value goes up even more. That's your prerogative. But I'd say if you're going to make a move in the tight end room, it's putting Jelani Woods on the auto accept trade block, or dropping him, and otherwise trying to tear down from Greg Dulcich to, like I said, it doesn't have to be Tyler Higbee, but like someone in the range that could still produce for you this year. Maybe doesn't have the same hype as someone like Greg D, but can still produce for you this year, and tacking on a second, or even a second and a third, or something like that. Or even another running back, maybe tack on another spot start type of running back,
Yeah, because I'm checking right now. It looks like Sam Laporta is 10th on Keep Trade Cut, and then Greg Dulcich is 12th.
Sam Laporta's above Greg.
Yeah, he's 10th.
That's wild.
Currently.
Damn. Okay, I thought Greg
Yeah.
D was being overhyped. Sam Laporta's being hella over. Okay, maybe we should try to trade him.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the move.
Right. Yeah. And again, I mean, okay. Do you want to do me a favor real quick, and for the people, do you want to pull up Keep Trade Cut really quick on the screen?
Oh, sure. There we go.
Okay, so we're looking at the tight ends there. So where's okay? So I see Sam Laporta right after Michael Mayer, tight end 10, right, and then Greg D at tight end 12, right?
Yeah, down here, 12.
Can you scroll down a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Who else is below?
So I mean, yeah, don't. Okay, so like Sam Laporta's at the top there. I mean, hell, even someone like Evan Ingram. I mean, Dalton Schultz. I mean,
I like
trade
Evan
him for-
Ingram,
I
yeah.
don't know. Who do you like?
I like Evan Ingram. I would
Okay,
be down to do that, yeah. Give me a second or
Yeah.
a third. I'm
Yeah,
done.
could you do Sam Laporta for Evan Ingram in a second? And if
Mhm.
that gets rejected, can you do Sam Laporta for Evan Ingram in 2/3?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I like the
I
sound
mean-
of it, yeah.
Out of curiosity, where is Tyler Higbee? Because I still don't even see him within the top like 22 tight ends.
It's like 30th or something.
Jesus. Oh yeah. Wait.
34, yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay, so don't even go as low as Tyler Higbee.
No.
Start higher, and then you could even tear down again. Let's say you trade Sam Laporta for Ingram in a second,
Mhm.
and then you go trade Ingram for Tyler Higbee in another second.
Yeah, there you go.
That's 2 extra seconds, and you haven't disrupted your roster construction.
Yeah.
Boom.
I love it.
Yeah, looks super.
I like the
love it
suggestion.
too. All right, so again, that's kind of what I would do, especially because, like I said, I think people are overvaluing the tight end premium in this league.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if this was a temptation of yours, but like I would not be trying to tier up at tight end. I think it's a waste of extra capital, and again, unless you
Yeah.
can get a guy like Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, which I don't think you're going to be able to do for a reasonable price.
Mhm.
I mean, if you can, let's see. Would you do? I mean, because those guys truly are like difference makers. Would you trade Greg D in a second to get Mark Andrews?
In a second? Yeah, I
Probably have
would.
to give up more than that, actually. Would you
Yeah.
do Greg D in a first to get Mark Andrews?
I have Lamar, so yeah. I would do that.
Okay. So I mean, that's another option too. I feel like,
Mhm.
and again, everyone has their own kind of rankings. I don't know how you even see it, Gabe, but like the way I see it, I don't even consider Kyle Pitts in that difference-making range, especially in a 0.5 tight
Yeah.
end premium. Again, like I can't emphasize that enough. In a 0.5 tight end premium, there are very few tight ends that actually make a difference. So the only ones I'd consider in that category for this upcoming season, at least, I know we're playing Dynasty, but if you're trying to contend this year, it's Kelce and it's Andrews. And obviously Andrews is probably the preferred option because he's younger and has more market value than Kelce at this point of his career. But other than that, like if you can tier up for a reasonable, again, if you can trade Greg D and a first, whether it's 24 or 25, for Mark Andrews or Kelce, I would do it for either of them. Otherwise,
Okay.
if you can't do that, I would just try to tier down from Laporta or Greg D and try to, build out your team that way and get some extra draft capital or, like I said, spot start running back, something like that. Make sense?
Wait, so for tiering up, you said a first or a second to tier up to these guys? For Andrews, for example?
Well, for Andrews or Kelsey, I mean, personally, I'd be willing to give whoever people think is your most highly valued tight end, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
Laporta or Dulcich. Like, I'd be willing to trade either of those and a first to get Andrews or Kelsey.
Okay. All right. Cool.
But I'm just saying, I don't think it's because of the lower tight end premium. I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
worth it for you to try to tier up to anybody else because I don't
No.
think they're difference makers. I think those are the only two guys that are difference makers.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Pitts, he's a conundrum. I mean, if you want to include him in that category, I wouldn't fault you for it. Personally, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. I think Kyle Pitts will eventually break out, and all of us who
Mm-hmm.
doubted him are going to end up looking stupid. I'm not saying that I doubt him, but I don't know if he's going to make enough of a difference this season for your team
Yeah.
with the shaky quarterback situation and I don't know. I mean, the team barely threw the ball at all last year. I think they will throw it more this year now that they don't have Mariota at quarterback. But anyway, so if you want to include Pitts in that tier, I wouldn't like blame you for it. I wouldn't argue. But for me, it's only really Andrews or Kelsey if you're going to tier up.
Okay. And then speaking about that, how about we go over to the warp tool? You want to for the tight end?
Yes, actually, could we? Yeah, because I was gonna bring that up too. But
To reload.
yeah, and so while it's loading, I'll just bring it up really quickly. So I was looking at the points per game leaders for this league last year, and
Mhm.
so across all positions, the top 20 point per game leaders across all positions,
Yeah.
18 of the top 20 were quarterbacks or running backs.
Wow.
There was
20,
one wide
18 of them.
receiver. There was one wide receiver. It was Cooper Kupp, and the one tight end you can probably imagine was Travis Kelsey, and he was number 20. So even Kelsey was like
Wow.
barely in the top 20 of points per game leaders in this league. So that shows you the importance of quarterbacks and running backs,
Mm-hmm.
and B, it shows you why, in my opinion, I think it makes sense to fade the wide receivers and even the tight ends to an extent in this league because
Yeah.
they're just not difference makers.
No.
Now Kelsey, I think, was a difference maker. He's still in the top 20. Andrews, I think, had a down year. If he rebounds, I think he'll be a difference maker. And maybe Kyle Pitts could get into that category. But I think that's about it. And anyway, I'll stop there. Do you want to kind of introduce, like, or explain what you're looking at here, what we're seeing on the screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this is found on southharmonff.com/warp. This is the warp tool. So it's wins over replacement. So then this basically
Like,
shows.
explain what warp is. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I feel like I'm not the best person to explain it, but basically the warp. So like for example, like one warp is compared to 0 is basically the guys on the waiver wire. So over guys that you can just pick up off so so it's basically guys that you can pick up off waivers. So a guy like Kelsey has a very high warp, as you can see up here, 2.37 for the tight ends. But then somebody like Jordan Akins or even Kyle Pitts last season was 0.05. So this basically shows that these players are either massive difference makers for your team, or they're not really doing much for your squad on a weekly basis.
Yeah, well, and I think you're extrapolating almost a little bit too much. Like you're
Mhm.
right, it's like a 0. Basically, so it's wins over replacement, right? So a player with one
Yeah.
warp is adding one extra win to your roster for the entire season, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean,
Mhm.
if one player is doing that, one warp can go a long way. It's not necessarily off the waiver wire is 0, but it's almost like replacement level, which you could
Right.
argue can be found on the waiver wire. But basically, like what Gabe just showed you there, last year Kyle Pitts was replaceable. He
Yeah.
was he was replacement level.
Right
He
here.
wasn't adding anything to your team. Now, granted, he
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily taking away either because warp can be negative, but he wasn't adding anything to your team. So I think warp is a really great tool to use. I know a lot of people in the Dynasty community are starting to use it more heavily now, and so I know Gabe, obviously, yeah, you've been like using Koopa Troopa's warp calculator for a while now, and kind of diving into it. But so let's see. Okay, so can you break down what color is represented for each position? Like what each color represents?
Yeah, sure. So the red are the quarterbacks, and then
Go
green
figure. They're at the top.
are the running backs. Yeah, which is second here, and then tight ends are orange, and then the wide receivers are blue.
So the top wide receiver and tight end are both at the exact same warp there, which is a
Mhm.
little over 2, which is
That's
again
interesting.
that's very good warp. I mean, so yeah, Justin Jefferson, not surprisingly, Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelsey are adding over 2. Each of them individually are adding over 2 extra wins to your team for last season. Now, hearing people talk about warp, um, one of the tough things is it's not predictive.
Yeah.
Well, one cool thing about this warp calculator is you can personalize it to your specific league. So as you guys can
Yeah.
see, Gabe put in this league and for last season, and so like you can specify it to your league to see who are the highest warp players. But the downside to warp is that it's not predictive. So this only shows you last year's data. This doesn't show you necessarily who's going to be the top warp scorers for 2023, but it definitely gives you an idea of which positions to prioritize over others. So yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
sorry, I
Yeah.
feel like I kind of cut you off there, but go ahead. I mean, like,
No,
how
that's
have you
okay.
used the tool so far? Like, how do you plan to use it, or I guess anything else you want to share about Warp in general?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Because I think this is fairly new. I think it came out maybe like a month ago or so. So it's a pretty new tool, and I think they're going to add more to it soon. But I think ultimately the biggest takeaways, like you said, are kind of what positions to prioritize in your particular league based on the settings. So this includes basically the 0.25 point per carry. It includes the point 0.5 tight end premium and the PPR scoring format. So then I think the biggest takeaways you can use are who has the highest warp per position, and then how many guys are above like kind of one or two, and how many positions deep that goes. So like let's say like 12 deep for the and then also so like for the running backs, 12 is Miles Sanders here at 1.43 warp. So the warp is still pretty high even at RB12. And then also I think the biggest takeaway as well that you can use is kind of see where the flat tiers are and look at like for the running backs, for example, kind of around here or like 12 or like even all the way back here at 9 or 10. And then if you go all the way back to 22, it's still 0.99. So it doesn't really fall off that much even from for 12 or 14 ranked.
Yeah. No, seriously, even like who it looks like it's the RB6. Who was that?
Uh,
Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb, yeah.
So even from the RB6 on, it can if you could move your mouse so we could see the dots, like it even kind of flattens off from there.
It
So
does, yeah.
so it's literally, and again, this is not predictive. These numbers fluctuate year to year. But last season, you mean to tell me there were really five, give or take, but like more or less five running backs that were making a difference in
Yeah.
this league? And that's one of the positions that's higher warp across the four positions. So I just again I think that's just more hard concrete evidence to show the value of tearing down at these positions. Like
Yeah.
unless you have one of the true elite difference makers, I think it makes sense to tear down and tack on another first or another second or a couple seconds, whatever you can do, or other position players. So yeah, no, I think that was a good breakdown. And like you said, I think it's so important to look at like the flat tiers too. I mean,
Yeah.
look at tight ends. It was only Kelsey last year. It flattens off
It's
after
way up
Kelsey.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
It
TJ
flattens
Hawkins
off.
is way down here at number 2.
Right. So, anyway, we're not here necessarily to plug the Koopa Troopa's Warp Calculator, but it is a very helpful tool. It's a small paid subscription every month, so if you guys are interested, we definitely recommend it. It's not a lot to pay, and you can pay monthly. So if you decide you don't want to use it after 1 month, you just pay for the 1 month and you're done. Or you can pay annually, but it is a really cool tool to use, play around with, and personalize it to your specific league. So unless you had anything else to say about Warp, do you want to go back to your roster and we'll break down the wide receivers?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I guess the only thing I was going to add is on the tight end, since we were talking about that topic, that Kelsey up here has super high warp, but then immediately, literally the number 2 tight end drops to 1 warp. So you can see this massive fall off here, and then there's a huge flat tier, basically from like tight end 4 or 5 even all the way to like tight end 18. And then immediately, even at tight end 25, then it goes negative. It goes 0, and then it's negative. So these guys are literally doing absolutely nothing for you. So
They're literally, if they're negative, they're taking away wins from your team.
right.
Because you could be
If you're
starting.
starting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I think this shows like I think this kind of backs it up where you don't really want to prioritize the tight ends unless you maybe have like one of the top 2 or 3. But even then, even if you have like the tight end 6, he's not really doing that much for your team.
Exactly.
Compared to if you trade Dallas Goedert for Stevenson or something like that, or Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, and that's why I was saying with the tight ends, I think it makes sense to tier down from Greg D and Sam Laporta if you can get, you know,
Mhm.
a guy in a tier or two below and tack on another pick or something or another player.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I can't decide it if because I kind of like the idea of doing like Greg Dulcich and a first for Mark Andrews to get the stack with Lamar. I think I might try that, and then I think if that doesn't work, then I think I'll probably try something like Evan Ingram and yeah, I think I'll do Greg Dulcich and for Evan Ingram and a third or a second or something like that, or Cole Kmet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, again, I think those are your two options at tight end. Either pay up for one of the two, maybe three elite guys, depending how many you see in that tier, or otherwise just tier down and tack on extra picks or players.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you want to go to the wide receivers now?
Sure.
All right. I've got some thoughts here.
Okay.
So, luckily, you don't have too many wide receivers. You don't have like too many. Um, Again, I did not coin this term. Scott Connor coined this term, but roster clogger wide receivers, basically guys who are outside of a starting range that are just clogging your roster. They're taking up a spot in your roster that could be used for a spot start running back or maybe even another like tight end in certain leagues or certain scenarios. But okay, so starting at the top, you are a little thin here at the top end guys
Yeah.
here, but so you got DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Rashid Shaheed. He's probably not your third best wide receiver, but he's up there. And then
Yeah.
you got Donovan Peoples-Jones, Hollywood Brown, Jacoby Myers. On the bench, you got John Mechie and Marvin Mims, and that is it. Yes. Okay. So in all, you only have 8 wide receivers, which is a decent amount. Like I'm not saying you should have more than that. I'm just saying it's kind of a good thing. I think it's a good thing you don't have too many roster clogger wide receivers. Okay. So, you tell me what you think about this.
Okay.
I'm curious if this puts you in the uncomfortable range, but when I was kind of like doing my deep dive into your team, like getting ready for the video, looking at stuff, one of the first things I thought was tearing down from DK Metcalf.
Okay.
Does that idea scare you a little bit?
No, I don't think so. So you're saying to down tier to another wide receiver?
Yes.
Okay.
So, hold on before we kind of get into it too much. You know the warp graph that we were just looking at, right?
Yep.
And so how quickly all the positions flattened off, right? Especially the tight ends and the wide receivers are flattened off quite a bit. So, in my opinion, I don't think DK Metcalf is in a range where he's a difference-making wide receiver. So, but I think he has a lot more name value than guys maybe in the same tier or similar tiers as him that you might be able to tier down.
Right.
So, and again, I know it might be, I don't know, it might be scary because he's your best wide receiver most likely, or at least your most highly valued wide receiver
For sure.
on a team that's kind of, devoid of high-end wide receiver talent. So it might be kind of an uncomfortable position. But could you pull up the keep trade cut rankings very quickly?
I was already going to it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So you're already on the wide
Good
receiver.
call.
Okay. So there's DK Metcalf there, wide receiver 14, right?
Mhm.
All right. I'll give us all a second for our eyes to find DK Metcalf, wide receiver 14.
Right.
Okay, yeah, there you go. There he is. Now, the first thought I had was, and I don't know, this one might be too much, but
Mhm.
just a couple spots down there. Could you tier down to Jordan Addison in a second for DK Metcalf?
I think so.
If you plug that into a trade calculator, it
Mhm.
probably not. It would probably be unequal. It would probably say that the Addison at second side is more value because, in my opinion, it is. So, but you could try that with someone if someone sees DK Metcalf as a tier above. Now, the tough thing with DK obviously is that they just drafted JSN, so that's hurt his stock quite a bit. So
Yeah.
even if you have to go further down than Jordan Addison, can you go down to Christian Watson, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy? Can you tier down to one of those guys and tack on a second? The ultimate point here is I think all of these guys are in a similar range. We can keep going even down further. I mean, Deontay, Jahan Dotson, DJ Moore, Traylon
Yeah.
Burks, Mike Pittman, Debo. Like, I'd be okay, Terry McLaurin. I'd be okay tearing down to any of these guys if you're going to add a second to them. I
I
mean,
think people would do it too.
if you have it, since you're on Keep Trade Cut, would you want to pull up, let's see, I mean, pick one of these wide receivers that you'd be most interested in tearing down to.
And then try it in the
Well, yeah, just
In the
pick one right
calculator.
now. Who would it be?
Brandon Ayuk maybe.
Okay. So pull up in the trade calculator and Keep Trade Cut. Pull up DK Metcalf for Brandon Ayuk and what do we want to call it, a mid 24 second?
Sure. Let's
Okay.
see. There we go. My case. Mid-second. That's even.
And it says it's fair. Yeah. Now, see,
Yep.
obviously, team two, the team that's getting 2 pieces, Ayuk in the second, is a little bit higher, but it's within the range that Keep Trade Cut calls it a fair trade. So
Yeah.
hypothetically, that's a trade that you could get done.
Mhm.
Is that a trade you'd be comfortable doing?
I think I would, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell the people why.
Because I think based off the warp tool that these wide receiver 2s and 3s are scoring pretty much the same points for your roster, and as we saw, a lot of the wide receivers over here are actually scoring well below the running backs. Because it's kind of crazy, actually. Like the RB, even like 20 is basically scoring more than like the wide receiver 10. It's kind of nuts.
Yep. And well, if you want to go to that, that leads me to my next point.
Okay.
Is can you trade DK Metcalf for a similar tier running back? Because
Yeah.
of the carry. So, but first of all, like with this wide receiver tier down, again, I think it makes sense. There's actually, I looked at the data. This was a few months ago. Like this was right during the beginning of the offseason. That basically shows, historically speaking, across their careers, DK Metcalf has the same points per game as. Can you guess? It's another wide receiver that's also on your on this team of yours.
Jacoby Myers?
No, higher than
Oh.
that.
What else do I have?
Hollywood.
Oh, it's Hollywood. Okay.
Hollywood. DK Metcalf and Hollywood Brown are basically the same players across their NFL careers, points per game wise. But almost everywhere, and this was especially before the NFL draft, DK Metcalf was valued much higher than Hollywood Brown. I mean, yeah, even just there, right? And they're still. I mean, yeah, DK's wide receiver 14, Hollywood's wide receiver. What is that? 34.
34. Yeah. He's way down there.
That's egregious, first of all. But anyway, so like a few months ago, this was before the NFL draft. I went and I had DK Metcalf, not in many leagues. I had him in two leagues, and in both leagues I traded DK Metcalf for Hollywood Brown and a first round pick. And
wow,
so,
nice.
But so, see, even after the NFL draft and he has added target competition, you can still get a similar deal done. You probably can't get, another first with your tier down, but you can get. Yeah, see, that's a little too much.
Or you could give a second or something. I mean, for example, I could give one of my 25 seconds.
Well, and then at that point, you're actually giving too much, it says.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could do
Ayuk.
Brandon Ayuk in a first for DK in a second.
There you
Something
go.
like that might work.
There you go. Yeah, you could try to do something like that. Or if that doesn't work with the first trade we showed, maybe so DK Metcalf for Ayuk in a second. Let's say the guy doesn't want to do that. You can do DK Metcalf, tack on a third on your side. So DK in a third for Ayuk in a second. Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I think this one was even. But I would be probably willing to throw on a third.
Yeah.
So if it's a second, yeah, this says it's fair.
Yeah. Now, maybe another potential deal that you could try to do is can you, again, either straight swap DK for a running back? Personally, I don't like that as much. When I'm trading a position away, I like to get another position back.
Yeah.
So maybe could you package DK in a running back and get another running back, wide receiver back, or something like that? Like maybe let's just use Brandon Ayuk. Let's keep using him as the example. Could you take DK Metcalf and Zach Charbonnet? And okay, yeah, I'll wait if you want to put them in the trade calculator for Ayuk. And I mean, name a better running back than Zach Charbonnet, someone you value. Or, I don't know. Like Nick Chubb.
Like up here, like ETN or something?
Or ETN, yeah, whatever you want. It tells you it's an even trade. Now, again, Team 2 is getting a little extra value, which I think makes sense. But see, so a trade like that, basically, you're quote-unquote tearing down at wide receiver when they're in a similar range. And then at running back, personally, I think Charbonnet and ETN are in a pretty similar range. But, again, it's kind of the value that you're getting there. Maybe instead of ETN, you have him throw in a 24 first.
Yeah. And also, I think this is a good point to bring up too, since we're using keep trade cut here. I think a lot of people don't shift to the league settings because then, like this league, it has the point per carry, but then somebody might be doing exactly this and putting it right into keep trade cut and saying that it's even though this keep trade cut is not including the point per carry.
Right. And no, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very good point. Yeah, people aren't going to be keep trade cut does not specify for your league. Now that's what's nice about the warp tool, and also using Dynasty Daddy. Like if you want to go to that screen really quick,
Sure.
it literally, that's another thing that's like specifies for your league. It's showing you, like, it gives you power rankings. That's what we have on the screen right here. So it shows you for each team like what tier they kind of fall into. Now, of course, who's team number 1 at their top
It's
there? Well,
you.
that's me. I mean, you're not surprised, obviously. But, no, I'm kidding. But like, and it shows you what tier each team is in. Now, you see, this league has a lot of teams that fall into the contender tier. Now, you are one of the few that's in the rebuilding tier. There's a couple friskies and there's a fraud. But again, it kind of breaks it down by position too. So like who's strongest at each position, and then the overall rank. And so it can kind of give you like a quick snapshot of your league. Another cool thing about Dynasty Daddy is that they've got a trade finder tool. So you can literally, if you want to go to that. So there's a trade finder, and Dynasty Daddy is free, by the way. Like you can choose any player, any combination of players and picks on your team, and then it will generate trade suggestions for you to make with other teams in your league based on who they have on their team. So yeah, DK
I'll try
Metcalf's
that.
plug them into, and I just realized it's funny, they're on the same team. But anyway,
And you can
So-
ask for certain things. If I want to say like I want an RB back or something like that, then you can do that. It's nice.
right, yeah,
Chris Olave,
So,
early
yeah,
first.
yeah.
JT.
Now see, I don't know if I would do those tier ups like to Olave or Jonathan Taylor, because I think you're giving up too much. But like, look
Yeah.
at that trade from the one on the bottom. So Metcalf and Charbonnet for Travis Etienne, Michael Pittman, and OBJ. Now OBJ is kind of just a throw-in in that trade, but you know,
I
that's
like
another
this
one where you're kind of like maybe getting a more secure running back. Again, I think Charbonnet and Etienne are kind of in the same tier, but maybe a more secure running back, someone who could get more touches, or at least isn't sharing as much of the backfield workload. And then you're quote-unquote tearing down from DK Metcalf to Michael Pittman, when in reality they're probably going to score similarly.
Yep.
Now, would I be shocked if DK Metcalf outscores Michael Pittman this season? No, but I think it's going to be in a range where, as we saw in the warp graph, it's not going to make that much of a difference for your total team's output.
And ETN, I think, would probably help me a lot more than Charbonnet for this year.
Right. Now look at that last trade. DK and Zach Charbonnet for Christian McCaffrey. Now I think that's maybe a little too much to give up for one player, but could
Yeah.
you have them tack on a second? Could you trade DK Metcalf and Zach Charbonnet for McCaffrey in a second? Maybe even like 2/3 or something like that. Like that's a deal I would do, because I think McCaffrey's a difference maker at his position. So anyway, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, but okay. And then last thing here, because we are over an hour. Do you want to go back to your roster, or was there anything else you want to do on this website?
Well, I guess the playoff calculator I think would be interesting to show.
Sure. What % chance does it show for you to make the playoffs? Well, you're second from the bottom.
Yeah, second. Yeah, second last.
Oh wow! So it's giving you less than a 1% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Playoffs. Sorry.
You're talking
That-
playoffs.
well, okay. I think that's a little. I don't know how accurate that is, but
Yeah.
again, there's a lot that can happen between now and the playoffs. But
Mhm.
just another way to kind of give you a snapshot of where your team's at right now, right?
Mhm.
So if you're gonna take this advice or take it seriously, like you said, you want to contend this year. This tool is showing you that your team is not a contending roster right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? If you make some of these trades we're talking about, these tier downs especially, your team's still not going to show up as a contending roster on there. But because it doesn't take into account the flexibility of the draft picks, you have those extra draft picks that you can then use during the season to make yourself a contender when it counts.
Exactly. Yeah,
Just
because
think about it.
it says
So
I'm
many people are trying
third.
to. So many people are trying to like lock themselves into being a contender right now, right? When we're in the end of June. Think about what happens when we get halfway through the season and 4 teams in the league they suck, right? They have
Yeah.
injuries. Their team's not performing as well as they thought they would. They're out of the race. Then all of a sudden you only have 7 other teams to compete with, and that's when you can go all in, trying to buy the pieces to make yourself a contender with the extra draft capital that you accumulate now during the off season. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I guess then to your point, like this contender, he does not have his 24 first. This contender also does not have a 24 first to use.
That's
This
the
guy,
thing.
he doesn't have a first or a second.
Yeah.
And this guy has a first, but he's also towards the back. And then this guy doesn't have a first or a second, and he has 0 firsts
Yeah.
of
And-
all
and
of his
what-
draft picks. So,
What about the contender at the top of the screen?
ooh,
Oh, no,
ouch.
oh, 24 first. Okay, huh. Well, If you want a 24
4.
first, looks like maybe you should be going to him. But anyway,
Yeah.
pay up. That's your price for this roster breakdown. You gotta give me your best players. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's just a helpful way to look at it. If you want to go back to your team really quick, we'll just break down the draft picks really quickly. So
Sure.
like you don't have your own 24 first, but you do have a 24 first. Now, I'm sorry, you just left Dynasty Daddy, but is that team projected to be a contender?
Which one?
The
Oh,
team
top
24
bullet.
first you have.
He is, yeah, but he's 12th on the board. I can go back to it quick.
Okay.
So he's actually at the bottom of this list of overall rank. And,
But
no, he's 11th. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's listed as a contender. Okay. So if you can go back to your roster then, so we're projecting that maybe that's going to be a later 24 first, which is, obviously that's fine. It's not the best, not as good as an earlier mid 24 first, but
Yeah.
at least you have one. And again, yeah, if you're not trying to tank, then I don't think you need to go out there and try to get your 24 first back. I think you're comfortable at least now because you have one. You still have a 24 second, your own 24 second, third, and fourth. And then 25, you got your own first. You've got 3 25 seconds and a 25 third and fourth. And then we're not even going to look at 2026. That's too far ahead right now. But you've got a decent amount of draft capital to play with there. Plus, then if you're able to do some of these tier downs, you're only going to add to that, collection of picks. Only gives you more flexibility. Sorry, I have to cough.
Okay.
I've been talking too much. So, well, did I fix your team? No, I'm kidding.
I think you did.
It was a team effort, but I think we definitely generated some good ideas.
Yeah.
And again, this extends to you all out there too. Like the number one thing here, right? We broke down Gabe's specific team in this specific league. The number one thing is look at the settings for your league. Look at the points per game leaders, especially if you're on
Yep.
sleep. It's very easy to do that. Look at the points per game leaders from last season. If any of you have Koopa Troopa's Warp Tool or you want to get it, like look at that. That'll show you. Even Dynasty Daddy, it's a free website, and Keep Trade Cut 2 is free. Like you can check out all these different sources to get some information, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're the only one that's going to know the specifics of your league in terms of the settings, the trade market, how active people are, what players or positions people or picks that people value more highly than others. So use all that stuff to your advantage. Familiarize yourselves with your league, and then do a thorough breakdown of your own team and see where you might be able to, trim some of the fat off and improve your team, even on the margins. Every little move can make a difference, especially during the season. So, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was fun. Oh, and then also I will link all the websites in the description below, so you guys can all go to the sites and check them out.
Good call. Yeah. Now, of course, by the time we upload this, it's going to be pretty late tonight, but
Yeah.
that's okay. It's a Friday night, right? People are out late partying, watching Dynasty content, Dynasty done differently.
And they'll
Yep.
come home, watch the video.
Yeah. Hey, when I've been out partying, all I want at the end of a long night of partying is Taco Bell and Dynasty done differently content. So
And make some trades.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, I think this was fun. Obviously, again, please, you guys in the comments, let us know. Do you like this type of content? Is it interesting for you? Do any of you want your own roster breakdowns? And if maybe if we get a good response, we can maybe next time you can break down one of my rosters or something like that. Or we've got plenty of content ideas. So this was fun.
Yeah.
I think we're shorter than our last couple videos, but we're still over an hour. But
Yeah.
I for that every time now. But
Thanks for watching, though, guys.
yeah,
And all the new subs.
yes,
Up to
yes,
12
thank you
now,
for
which is awesome.
subscribing. Yes, double digits. Thank you all for subscribing. And again, please let us know your feedback. If what you want to see, if you want to keep seeing stuff like this, different stuff, let us know. We're flexible, and we just want to, we're both really passionate about Dynasty football, so we want to keep creating content that people enjoy watching. So with that, I'll stop talking. This was a lot of fun, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.